The art gallery was a cathedral of glass and marble, its walls dressed with canvases worth thousands, some millions. Spotlights danced over abstract shapes and brushstrokes no ordinary eye could price. Patrons in sleek black suits and elegant dresses strolled with wine glasses in hand, their conversations low, punctuated by soft laughter and the occasional critique. Then she walked in. Lena, she wore a modest floral dress, comfortable flats, and carried a worn leather satchel. She didn't look like she belonged, not in a place where people measured each other by designer labels. But her eyes, wide and curious, soaked in every frame with wonder. She paused at every painting, taking her time, as if listening to a story only she could hear. It didn't take long before someone noticed. A gallery assistant, sharp in a tailored uniform, approached with a tight smile. "Excuse me, ma'am? May I help you?" Lena smiled politely. "No, thank you. I'm just looking." The assistant's smile thinned. "I'm afraid this exhibit is by invitation only." "I was not aware," Lena replied gently. "I saw the door open and thought, perhaps you'd feel more comfortable visiting the public exhibit next door." The assistant cut in, eyes flicking to Lena's plain attire. "This collection is ... exclusive." Her cheeks flushed, but she nodded, not wanting to cause a scene. As she turned to leave, a few nearby patrons chuckled quietly, their gazes dripping with quiet disdain. One of them whispered she probably thought it was a free museum. Lena walked out slowly, her eyes lingering on the art she wouldn't see again. What they didn't know, what no one in that gallery knew, is that she wasn't just anyone, and by the time the night was over, every single painting on those walls would belong to her, or more precisely to her husband. Outside, the evening air was cool, but Lena's face still burned from the sting of humiliation. She walked slowly down the stone steps, her eyes downcast, not because she was ashamed, but because she knew this feeling too well. It wasn't the first time she'd been dismissed for not looking the part, and she doubted it would be the last. She reached into her satchel and pulled out her phone. Single message was enough. "They asked me to leave. Said I didn't belong." Didn't take long for the reply. "Which gallery?" She smiled faintly, her heart easing a little. She sent the name, then tucked the phone away, knowing that her husband never let such moments pass without action. Back inside the gallery, the patrons continued their slow, curated admiration of the art. The assistant who had asked Lena to leave stood by the entrance, chatting with a couple about the latest auction prices. Then, the gallery doors opened again. This time, a man in an immaculate charcoal suit stepped in. His presence was immediate, commanding, but graceful. His name was Idris, and while many in the room didn't recognize his face, the gallery director certainly did. His family's investments touched industries from tech to real estate. Tanned art was his quiet passion. The assistant's smile returned, suddenly wide and eager. "Good evening, sir. Welcome." Idris' gaze was cool. "I'm here about your entire collection." The assistant blinked. The entire collection, sir?" "Yes," Idris said flatly. "Every piece on these walls. I want them all." "Name, your price." The room fell quiet. The gallery director rushed over, stammering, "Of course, Mr. Idris, we can certainly prepare documentation." But Idris wasn't done. He glanced at the assistant who had mocked his wife earlier. "Also," he said coldly, "I'd like to know who decided my wife wasn't worthy of standing here." The assistant paled, realizing too late that the woman they had pushed out just minutes ago was married to the man who now owned everything around them. The assistant's face drained of color, her mouth opening, but no words coming out. Gallery director's stern gaze snapped to her, already piecing together the disaster unfolding in front of the elite guests. "I didn't know she was," the assistant began, her voice weak. I'd cut her off with a glance so cold it froze. Her mid-sentence, "You didn't know because you didn't care to ask." He looked at her clothes and decided she was unworthy. The entire gallery was silent now. The whispers had stopped, the chuckles vanished. The patrons who had sneered earlier watched, realizing the gravity of their mistake, not just a social faux pas, to be a moral failure laid bare. Idris turned to the gallery director. "Prepare the purchase agreements. Every piece. Today." "Of course, Mr. Idris," the director nodded hastily, his hands trembling slightly. "We'll arrange delivery." "No," Idris said sharply. "They stay here for now. Be sending new curators, ones who understand that value isn't worn on fabric." The assistant's head bowed, but Idris didn't even spare her another glance. He was already dialing his phone. Outside, Lena sat on a nearby bench, gazing up at the stars beginning to prick the evening sky. Her phone buzzed. She smiled when she saw the message. Come back inside, love. The gallery is yours. She stood, her steps slow, steady, her heart calm. She didn't need the paintings, the gallery, or the people's approval, but she knew this wasn't just about her. It was about every quiet soul who had ever been told, hey, they didn't belong because of the way they looked. As she walked back toward the grand entrance, the heavy doors opened for her not because of who she married, because she'd always belonged. They just hadn't seen it until now. When Lena stepped back inside the gallery, the air shifted. Conversations halted. All eyes turned to her not with mockery this time, but with shame and curiosity. The same patrons who had chuckled under their breath now stood silently, watching the woman they had so easily dismissed. Idris crossed the room and met her halfway, his expression softening. As he reached for her hand, without a word, he led her toward the very paintings she had admired before, the ones she had been denied the dignity to appreciate. Together, they stood before each piece, quietly taking in the brushstrokes, the colors, the hidden meanings. An assistant who had thrown her out stood by the wall, eyes lowered, fidgeting with her sleeves. Too ashamed to meet Lena's gaze, Lena paused in front of her and smiled gently, not with pride or triumph, but with quiet grace. Do you know what I see when I look at these paintings? I asked softly. The assistant glanced up, startled. She shook her head. I see stories. I see someone's heart poured onto a canvas. I think it's sadder to miss that because you're too busy looking at someone's clothes. Her voice wasn't sharp. It was kind, but it cut deeper than any reprimand. The assistant's eyes glistened with regret. I'm sorry, she whispered. I judged you. Lena nodded. It's never too late to see people differently. As she and Idris continued their slow walk through the gallery, the director approached nervously. Mrs. Khan, he began, on behalf of the gallery, I deeply apologize for what happened. She turned to him with a soft smile. I don't need an apology. I need change. And with that, she left the director standing thoughtful, knowing that her words would linger in this place longer than any of the art on the walls. Because that night, Lena didn't just reclaim her place in the gallery. She changed the way it went. Would treat every visitor who walked through its doors from that moment on. The following week, the gallery's transformation began, not just in ownership, but in spirit. Idris ensured that every staff member underwent a complete reorganization. But it wasn't about customer service. It was about empathy. It's about seeing beyond attire. It's about valuing presence over pretense. He appointed Lena as the honorary cultural advisor to the gallery. She didn't seek power, but she accepted knowing. It was her chance to reshape how art and people could coexist without judgment. One of her first decisions was simple yet revolutionary. The gallery would host monthly open doors, days where entry was free, dress codes were abolished, local communities were invited to experience art without the barriers of class or appearance. On the first Open Doors Day, the gallery was filled with faces it had never seen before, children marveling at colors they'd never imagined, elderly visitors smiling at sculptures, young students sketching in notebooks. Inspired by work they'd only seen in books, Lena walked among them quietly, watching joy replace hesitation. This was what she had always believed. Art wasn't meant to be locked behind velvet ropes and glass walls. It was meant to be lived, felt shared. She caught the eye of the assistant who had once turned her away. The woman now worked humbly, helping guide families through exhibits, her demeanor softer, her gaze kinder. She approached Lena cautiously. Mrs. Khan, she said, I wanted to say thank you, not just for the second chance, but for opening my eyes. Lena smiled warmly. Thank you for choosing to see. And in that simple exchange, the gallery's legacy was rewritten, not just as a place of art, but as a place of understanding. Because Lena had done more than purchase paintings, she had painted the walls with dignity. And for the first time, everyone, regardless of how they looked, was part of the masterpiece. Months later, the gallery stood as a symbol not of luxury, but of transformation. People who had once felt too small, too plain, or too invisible to step inside, now wandered its halls freely. Their eyes lit with wonder. Lena visited often, always dressed as she had before. Simple, comfortable, unassuming. But no one dismissed her now. She wasn't recognized for her clothes or her husband's wealth. She was known for the quiet power that had redefined the space. One afternoon, she stood before her favorite painting, the same one she was never allowed to admire. Before a little girl approached her, Do you own this place? The girl asked innocently. Lena chuckled softly. Not really. I just made sure everyone can come and enjoy it. The girl grinned. I want to paint like that one day. Lena kneeled beside her, eyes soft, then paint. And never let anyone tell you that you don't belong. Outside, Idris watched her through the tall gallery windows, his heart full. He hadn't bought the gallery just to prove a point. He had done it because he knew the world needed to see what he saw, every death a quiet brilliance of the woman they all overlooked. And now? Her kindness echoed through every corner of the gallery. Every canvas, every frame, every open door was a reminder: respect is not given to the loudest or the richest. Sometimes it belongs to the quietest soul in the room, the one who changes the world without needing to change herself. And in that gallery, Lena's story hung in the air like art itself, forever part of the collection.